Hi, Dr. Leslie Austin here. Do you realize that you create your own reality? I'll bet you don't. I'll bet you think reality is something that's out there and fixed. Well, guess what? It's not. I'm not going to go into a whole long discussion here from Buddhism and Hinduism and ancient Chinese philosophies about consciousness and awareness. Another story for another day. However, think about this. A couple of hundred years ago, the only reality we as human beings knew was what we saw with our own eyes, in real time, wherever we were located. We didn't have photography. We didn't have recording instruments. We didn't have any way to represent anything that was going on except by drawing or painting. Then we got photography. And although the camera doesn't see exactly the way the human eye does, it at least captured an image of a fixed moment in space and time that people could look at and say, oh, that's what Paris looked like that time. That's kind of amazing. That was an amazing shift in human consciousness and awareness, that I could be sitting in New York and look at an early print, one of those silver prints, and see people crossing a square in Paris, which was one of the very earliest photographs made. That's a dual reality that didn't exist prior to that time. How does our brain process that if it's new to us? So if you look at the advance of technology over time, what happens is you get photography, then you get Edison and his phonograph, sound recordings. But you couldn't edit. You couldn't really retouch or edit photographs very well early on. And you couldn't edit the early recordings of Edison because they were wax cylinders. There was no way to change or edit them. So they were similar to reality, but not quite. The wax cylinders, the early recordings, they capture the sound, but not with the full fidelity of the human ear. And early photographs lack a certain depth. Certainly they were in black and white. So they represent reality, but they're not the actual reality the same way we perceive things as human beings. Well, as you move forward into time and you get the ability to start editing movies and you start getting color and you can change the colors in film depending on how you light it, we're making approximations or representations of reality that come pretty close, but still aren't the same as the way the human brain perceives in real time and space. Now, we have Photoshop. Do you know that there is no way to tell whether an image that you're looking at today ever happened and is real, or is an image that was real that's now created and altered, or edited, or it was completely made up? There's no way to know. And it's the same thing with sound recordings, and it's the same thing with film and video. Now, there was a French semiotician, a philosopher, I think in the 80s, who talked about the idea of a simulacrum. And what he was talking about, his name was Baudriard. And what he talked about was that what we were actually dealing with are no longer the thing itself. There is no real reality. Everything is subjective. Everything is referential. So, for example, I wrote as part of my dissertation many years ago about behavior and performance that pop recordings, rock recordings that we listen to on the radio never actually happened in space and time. They're a product of electronics and a console and a producer and an engineer and the artist, and they're multi-tracked, and often they're never performed live. And even if they are, they're completely electronically altered and mediated. So what you hear as the finished product is a product. It's not an actual performance because it never existed in space and time. And when you try to reproduce it live on stage, you can't. It's never the same. So Baudrillard said that when you hold back then the vinyl record or a CD, or even now an MP3 file in a player or your phone, that's a simulacrum. It's something that represents something else, but it's not the thing itself. And the thing itself doesn't actually exist in hardcore physical reality. It's mind-blowing. What that means is our technology has outstripped our ability for our own neurology to process what reality is. Why am I carrying on about this? Well, I'll tell you. Because we all create our own reality. Reality is subjective. And we have the choice and the power to decide What is our reality in our life? We can choose our mindset. We can choose our intentions. We can choose what we want to work on or not, what we want to enjoy or not. We create our own reality. And it's so important to remember that. If you're living in a way where you're not happy, or you think your circumstances are oppressing you, there are things you can do to shift how you respond to your circumstances until you can change them. You create your own reality from inside you. That's the nature of how I work with people. I help people really strengthen their own intentions and desires and then plan actions to take so that they change their reality, so that how they live in the world makes sense to them and is coherent. And all the rest, whether you enjoy it or not, is just noise. It doesn't have to determine your life. The news headlines don't have to determine how you feel that day. You can ignore them, you can obsess over them, you can take them in as information, you can take them in as information and say, oh, somebody tilted that. Any choice is possible. The reality is, how do you feel in this moment and what do you want to do next that will make you feel good, that will do something good, that will make your life vibrant and full and worth living? So I invite you, if you'd like to find out about this for yourself, how to create your own mindset, how to create your own reality, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you.